1 year ago, we brought you to a road in Estacada after the historic wildfires that tore through.
And all the forest right there was on fire, and it stopped right at our doorstep.
I've never experienced something to this magnitude of fear and despair.
So now we're bringing you back to see how the road is recovering.
The forest down here completely on fire just 1 year ago. And now this fig tree is growing back. What a sign of life.
You have to feel good seeing these homes being built and seeing your neighbors flourishing despite what they went through.
It's so awesome to see.
Here's the story. It is awesome to see, very awesome to see. Thank you for being with us, and hopefully you can see some of this awesomeness tonight. It's a Friday. What a better way to end the week. I'm Dan Haggerty. Thank you again. Welcome to The Story. You know the drill. We want to know what's on your mind, so please email us at thestory@kgw.com. Find me on Facebook and Instagram, or use Twitter and the hashtag #HeyDan. Let's start with the big story. So we've been spending a lot of time over the past few weeks on the show checking in with some of the communities recovering from last year's historic wildfires. It's something the news does. When there's a big event, we wait a year, we go back, and then we check in. I'll admit, tonight's check-in is one that I have been eager to do. Last year, Estacada got hit especially hard, a community that never expected something like this to literally threaten their lives. When most of the flames were out, the fire crews had pulled back. I put this on Facebook a year ago saying, I'll be in Estacada tomorrow. Let me know if you want to share your story. And I got a bunch of comments. I got hundreds of messages following this. And I remember reading through all of them. And somehow, don't ask me why, I got drawn to this one. It said, bro, come see me on my road. I'm the local iPhone news crew. I'll give you a great tour and introduce you to all the local heroes. DM me if you like. So that's what I did. And it led me to a story and to a country road that warmed the hearts of thousands. And yesterday, I went back to check in. It's almost exactly 1 year since a neighbor named Bonsai guided us down his road in Estacada that was covered in smoke and ravaged by fire.
This is our spread right over here.
He showed us around and shared videos of their firefight.
Like 4th of July up in here. You can see the stacks of buckets all over the place. There's one right around the corner too. Buckets and jugs of water that we're filling up from this little pond over here. It's a tiny ass pond, just like the size of a kiddie pool.
Amazing how quickly you use your bucket.
And he took us to the devastation in the 3 homes that burned to ash. It amounted in a moment that touched thousands of viewers when he read a text that he sent to neighbors the night the fire moved in.
Hey everyone, I'm so sorry to say that it seems like the worst case scenario is here. All the fire trucks are parked here in town. It seems like they had to retreat. Sorry for the bad news, everyone. Let's stay in touch.
I'll be the earth that ground you from the chaos all around. I'll be the home you return to. I can be your middle ground.
It was an emotional moment. But a year later, and the tears are dry, and the road is recovering.
This whole thing was demolished, burned. You can see all the burnt trees down here. And now this is the 1 year later, their garden is like perfect.
Some of the homes are rebuilt too.
We're here.
Wait, is this Eric's house?
Yeah, I know. It's like perfect, right?
But they didn't want us to put them on camera this time.
We got a little more publicity than we wanted.
None of us knew that their story would resonate the way it did with people. But their tragedy brought lots of attention to a quiet road.
We didn't expect it to be any significance, because everyone in Oregon and California and Washington, everybody was burning. You know, there's so many fires all over the place. Like, we were just one of many, just one little neighborhood of many areas, communities that burnt.
But this community spoke to people, and Bonsai hopes it does again, because of what emerged from the ashes. Not the plants or the flowers, but something deeper.
We met neighbors that we'd never met before. You drive by their house and you wave maybe, but we never met anybody like in person or bonded. When that fire came and when you came last year, the neighborhood came out of the woodwork and bonded so much. People got to know each other, started to have each other over for dinner, exchanged little gifts from the garden or whatever. And to this day, now we're all best friends. Like, I didn't know half these people on the road, and then the fire brought us together and now we're best friends. I love that, but I wish it wasn't a tragedy that brought us together.
So there are a lot of people across the state that went through that are rebuilding in similar ways. Some people are still out of their homes. They're still in hotels or in temporary shelters, even a year now after these wildfires. Think about that. Last year, the governor set up the Community Rebuilding Fund in partnership with a few different charity organizations to help people and communities to recover from those fires. And they're still taking donations, and they still need the donations. This is a long-term process, longer than a year, believe me. You can give at OregonCF.org. We've got a link on our social media pages if you're interested. All right, let's get to some vaccine mandates, specifically the one coming from the White House. President Biden's new COVID vaccine mandate for all private businesses with more than 100 employees, which counts for a lot of businesses, and it counts for hundreds of thousands of people in Oregon alone. These businesses will either have to make sure that their people are vaccinated or test them once a week. Now, I know what you're thinking, or what you might be thinking. Maybe you're thinking, is this legal? A lot of people are questioning the legality of this, including some Republican governors. Nan sent me this question. Hasn't the Supreme Court already ruled that vaccine mandates are legal? This happened over 100 years ago, so why do people think they aren't? Can you please talk about this? Sure. And first of all, Nan, you are right. In 1905, the Supreme Court signed off on vaccine mandates, mandatory vaccines after a smallpox outbreak in Massachusetts. At the time, the court held that in every well-ordered society charged with the duty of conserving the safety of its members, the rights of the individual in respect of his liberty may at times, under the pressure of great dangers, be subject to such restraint, to be enforced by reasonable regulations as the safety of the general public may demand. So yes, there is a legal precedent for the government mandating vaccines. Now, that doesn't mean people won't challenge it, okay? That doesn't mean that, but the precedent is there. Now, Audrey sent me this email. With Biden's vaccine mandate, does that apply to government agencies? And that's a good question, Audrey. Thank you for writing it in. It does not. It only applies to private businesses, although a lot of government agencies do have their own vaccine mandates. For instance, Governor Kate Brown is requiring all executive branch employees to get vaccinated, and the city of Portland is doing the same with its employees, except for police, which we told you about earlier this week. New guidance from the state says police are, quote, probably not covered by the mandate because providing medical care is not a fundamental part of their job. Now, you might be thinking, that's confusing. Why is providing medical care a condition for police when it comes to the vaccine, but not for some receptionist at City Hall, for instance? Well, it's a complicated answer, and we're working on clarifying that for you now, so stay tuned. But for now, the bottom line is the city can't force police to get vaccinated, and Multnomah County is saying the same about its sheriff's office. We should mention that Portland police did release some info about officers' vaccine status. The Bureau says at least 600 sworn members are vaccinated out of 795 on the force, which is a little more than 75%. That's not terrible. It's not a terrible number, 75%. I'd like it to be 100%, but it's not terrible. Why don't we check in to see how the rest of the state is doing? More than 2.74 million Oregonians have gotten at least their first dose. That's about 65.1% of the state's entire population, and that includes everybody, even kids under 12 who can't get vaccinated yet. In Washington, more than 5.26 million people have gotten at least their first dose. That works out to be a little bit more than 69% of the state's entire population, including kids. Tomorrow marks 20 years since 9/11. So let's take a look back with some of the Oregonians who were impacted by the attacks.
What woke me up was the plane crashing into the North Tower. It's a sound I've never heard before.
And as we think about the people who served in wars following 9/11, keep in mind that a lot of those veterans are living on the streets of Portland.
Do you have an address? No, I'm homeless. Well, we can't help you. Wait a minute, I'm not on drugs, never been in prison. You know what I'm saying? Serve my country, but you can't help me? Okay.
when the story continues. All right, welcome back. The weekend is almost upon us. I mean, the weekend might be upon you. You're probably done with work. I still got, what, 19 minutes left? Stick with me, all right? Well, we can do this together. Always go through your questions or comments during the break. I was just doing that. I always look for a couple that I want to address at the end of the show, so keep them coming. Use that email, thestory@kgw.com, or the hashtag HeyDan on Twitter. Also, please don't forget about our Hey Help campaign. This has been a great thing that we've been doing. It's really helped a lot of people. You've really helped a lot of people, really. It's a campaign where we ask people to donate to little organizations throughout our community. And this week, we've been helping to contribute to the Portland Fruit Tree Project. They collect and distribute fruit to people in need. If you have a fruit tree outside of your house and it's always putting fruit everywhere, you don't know what to do with it, call them. They'll come take that fruit and give it to people who need it. Okay, so if you want to help them out, open up the camera on your phone, point it at the QR code on your screen. It'll take you to a donation page. You can also go to kgw.com/heyhelp if you'd like. And these are micro donation campaigns. It doesn't have to give a ton of money, but they really do make a difference. Last week, for instance, we raised $10,000 for Milk Crate Kitchen, which goes a long way. So thank you to everybody who's been contributing and helping out. Now, every year around this time, 9/11, Portland comes together to help veterans struggling with homelessness. And normally to do that, there's a big indoor fair with haircuts and medical exams and job interviews in the works. Now, not shocking, COVID-19 has nixed that plan, so they're not doing it. That said, the mission carried on. Here's Maggie Vespa.
We'll give you the shot, and then you'll check in with the folks over there who are going to watch you for 15 minutes.
In a post-COVID world,
So we'll do this arm. I'm going to roll up your sleeve. And
taking care of those who served
I just want to get it over with.
means arming them with the ultimate weapon.
Oh, Lord have mercy.
In this case, a single dose of Johnson & Johnson.
Okay,
You got your shot.
I am vaccinated.
Navy veteran Angelo Domena wasn't sure this day would come. You were nervous.
Lord, nervous. And I was debating to do it, you know, but I was talking to my daughter on the phone, and she was telling me, hey, Dad, I got mine, get yours. Hello, how we doing today?
It helps that the shot was offered in a familiar setting. This is the 2021 Portland Veterans Stand Down, an annual event aimed at helping local vets struggling with homelessness. Pre-COVID, it looked like this. Crowds of strangers, face-to-face, volunteers offering info on social services, jobs, even haircuts. This year, that's still not possible.
Each bag will get some fresh fruit, water, whatever we can to get them.
Instead, volunteers with the nonprofit Transition Projects are packing up duffel bags of clothes and hygiene products and meeting with vets masked outside Veterans Memorial Coliseum. COVID isolated everyone. For a lot of vets, the pandemic has taken an especially tough toll.
The trust level is a little bit more difficult to get the trust of people to give them services. There's a lot more fear.
It's why organizers say it's especially crucial to connect with vets here. According to the last government count conducted in 2019, close to 470 veterans were homeless in Multnomah County, more than 11% of the overall homeless population. And while there's no new data to prove it, experts believe more people have become homeless since the pandemic began. Organizers here say it's likely the population of homeless vets is growing too.
People who doing drugs or mentally ill, you know, that's how they classify all homeless people. All right, thank you.
Domena was homeless in Portland for 15 years. Even for veterans, he says the stigma of sleeping on the streets is strong.
Door's been closed in my face. Do you have an address? No, I'm homeless. Well, we can't help you. Wait a minute, I'm not on drugs, never been in prison. You know what I'm saying? Serve my country, but you can't help me? Okay. You got more people who's willing to do the work, to stay and maintain, than you got people who want that free handout.
Maggie Vespa, KGW News.
Now, all this week, we've been asking you to share some of your stories and some of your memories from 9/11. Thank you to everyone who sent those in. And I want to read a couple for you just for a moment right now. Deborah, for instance, wrote in, said, on 9/11, I was in New York City with my daughter and two friends on the Upper East Side, standing in line to watch a taping of The View. After telling us what had happened, they canceled the taping. People gathered around delivery trucks and parked cars to listen to the radios. It was the only way we could find out what was going on. Cell phones were out. My daughter stood in line for an hour at a payphone to call home. She says they were eventually able to get across the bridge to New Jersey, where they could see the devastation in Lower Manhattan. Katie shared this one. I've been a flight attendant for over 30 years. I got up that morning to the phone ringing. It was my mother calling to make sure that I was still at home. She quickly told me to turn on the news. I was supposed to be commuting down to my base in Los Angeles that morning from Portland. I was scheduled to work a flight from LAX to Washington Dulles. I turned on the TV and I watched in horror as one of our planes hit the World Trade Center. It took many months before I had the courage to step foot on an airplane, and it took years to shake the fear. Thank you again for sharing these memories. I know that they're not easy for people to relive or even to tell. Pat Doris, for instance, talked to two Oregonians who were working in New York at the time the towers were hit. Here are their stories.
20 years ago, I was right here in our spare bedroom getting ready for an early morning walk at about 5:45. And then I got a page from the assignment desk at the TV station saying there'd been a terror attack and that it was big. I turned on my TV and I couldn't believe what I saw.
2,900 miles away, just across the Hudson River from the World Trade Centers, Corvallis native Laura Styler woke up late at a friend's apartment. She lived a life of bright lights and glamour as a model, very much in demand around the world.
You have to be pretty good and well known to have enough designers who want to hire you for the shows in every city. So I did New York, London, Milan, Paris, and even Tokyo and even Sydney.
She was in New York for a major event called Fashion Week, and her alarm failed to go off.
What woke me up was the plane crashing into the North Tower. The sound, it woke me up, but it's a sound I'd never heard before. I was like, did a dumpster fall on concrete? Like, what was that?
Across the Hudson River, Beaverton native Jason Baston was already on the way to his advertising sales job at the Discovery Channel. He lived on the same side of the river as Laura was staying. He remembers 9/11 like it was yesterday.
The day started out, it was a beautiful day, a little warm, but very sunny.
The train dropped him off in the basement of the World Trade Towers. He had to go up to the main mall to catch another train to his office.
While I did that, that's when I first recognized a very large sound. Sounded like kind of broken glass, but a deep bass sort of sound. And, living in New York at this point, you hear things that, don't always make sense, but you kind of become a New Yorker and you get along with your business. And that's kind of what I did.
He heard a plane had hit the Trade Center, but assumed it was a small one and an accident. Back in Jersey City, model Laura Styler thought her fashion show was probably still on, but worried the city would lock down and that she'd be late.
I'm like putting my clothes on and I'm like jumping one-legged, into my jeans, and I've got a toothbrush in my mouth and I'm watching the news and I'm looking at my phone, and then all of a sudden the second plane hits live on TV. But because I was in Jersey City, the TV, because the radio tower was on top of that tower, the TV and my phone went off.
Jason Basden had left his office and hurried downtown to find his roommate working at Madison Square Garden so they could get out of there together. He could see smoke coming from the side of one of the buildings. These are pictures the roommate, Jeff Gamble, took at the time.
And as I'm still walking south, I'm trying to get down to 34th Street to get over to the Madison Square Garden. And I heard a very loud, basically only female voice, a cry, a collective cry of female voices. It's almost as if it was like all of the men's voices were drowned out by this female voice cry. And I looked downtown, and at this point, all I saw was a massive plume of smoke. And it literally looked like downtown Manhattan had just blown up. And so I saw the smoke, and at this point I started to run.
He discovered Jeff had already left. He raced to a train platform and got on board for the strange trip back across the river.
The train went really slow on the trip, but it didn't stop at any of the stations. And each platform had a number of people, and people were yelling at the train. I remember people trying to grab the train, trying to like stop the train with their hands. And that was a bit frightening because you wanted to, you naturally wanted to help them because there was plenty of space on the train.
There was a woman crying with 2 children behind me. I remember she said that her husband was in the towers and she couldn't get a hold of him. I don't know what happened.
Back in Jersey City, Laura walked the short distance to the river's edge and watched in horror with many others as the buildings burned.
We were terrified that the building would fall. And I was on the phone with my mother, and I knew that there were news crews and firemen and police officers and people just standing at the base watching. And it was excruciatingly painful to not be able to warn them. Yeah. It's not something you forget. I mean, at that time, there were people hanging out of the buildings where the building smoke was. And we realized that they were jumping. And we were just sobbing,
Jason eventually ended up standing about 500 yards away from Laura on the same riverfront. They've still never met, but both witnessed the awful events that were so hard to believe. In the aftermath, it made each reflect on their lives. The magazine covers and the glamour suddenly meant little to Laura.
It kind of like, what am I doing with my life? Is it meaningful? Does it have purpose? And at that time, no. I mean, fashion is very glamorous, but I'm not saving lives here.
She now lives in Austin, Texas, is an author, and practices energy medicine. Jason realized he wanted more as well.
On occasion, I'd come home for work, and I would think, like, what am I doing for society? And I was thinking, and this is no disrespect to anybody in sales. Everybody has to make a living, but I felt, both my parents were educators, and I felt, there was an opportunity.
He got into coaching and teaching and is now an athletic director in New Hampshire, where he feels he and his school are impacting the lives of thousands. 2 of many changed forever by September 11th, 2001. Pat Doris, KGW News.
Those stories never get easier to hear. I don't think I've ever remembered hearing that detail that man gave about being on the train and people wanting to stop the train. It's amazing. With everything I've seen, I'm still hearing things I never heard before. So, again, thanks to everybody for sharing their stories with us this week. I'm going to be thinking about all of them tomorrow, as I'm sure you will as well. So please keep sending in your questions and comments. We'll try to address a few if we have some time after this, when we finish the story. Keeping Portland weird tonight, the new Flanders Crossing Bridge has a new name. It's called the Hi Diddly Ho Neighbor Ned Flanders Crossing. Of course it is, yes, after the Simpsons character. You can see him right there on that plaque with the trademark line, Hi Diddly Ho Neighborinos. Simpsons creator Matt Groening, of course, is from Portland, and he named Ned Flanders after Northwest Flanders Street. Peabot says that this is actually Portland's first official landmark name to honor the show. How are you keeping Portland weird out there? This is a pretty good one. It's tough to top, but hey, let us know. Email us to thestory@kgw.com or use the hashtag HeyDan on Twitter. Quick question from Jim. He said, what is the thinking behind including everybody, citizens such as those under 12 who can't get the shot in the state vaccination number? Of course, that's the number we give, the total population instead of the eligible population. And because we want to be able to portray overall safety when you're out and about and making decisions about what you want to do with your life. And of course, we know that the virus can be transmitted among everybody. I mean, older people and unvaccinated younger people. Of course, it can go between people who are vaccinated as well, but it's a lot less likely. And just want you to have all of the information you need to know as you go out the door and live your life and make those decisions. Keep the questions coming. Got a bunch of questions tonight about some of the topics we are covering that I just don't know the answer to yet. So thank you. We are going to go ahead and dig those up and watch next week to see what we can figure out. In the meantime, it is Friday. Enjoy it. Have a good one. We'll see you back here on Monday.